Well, it's a pleasure for me, and as you know, it's a pleasure for me to talk about Al too. So there's no problem at all. I was thinking while you were talking about all those people that I photographed, I realized that I had photographed Al only once, and that was one Polaroid in all that time, because I was never of the mind to really photograph the actors I worked with, because I had something else to do, and I was too, concerned with that. But It's funny to hear about all those other photographs and then realize I only photographed Al once.
Yeah. When were you first made aware of Pacino? Did he audition for you for Panic, or?
No, I had seen him several years before that on stage in Indian Wants the Bronx, and I thought he was just unbelievable. I mean, it was so powerful, and it moved me so, and I was with Marty Bregman at the time. Marty later became his manager, and I said, my God, if ever I directed a film, because I hadn't done any films yet, if ever I directed a film, that's the actor I'd like to work with. We went backstage and met him after, and as I say, Marty eventually started to manage him, but I don't know if it's known or not known, but I've told the story a number of times, because I had first turned down Panic in Needle Park because the lab had scratched the last 6 minutes of my first film, and I was very upset, and I wasn't really thinking too much of my next film. I was just working on this film. And I went up to Marty's office, and he said, there's a really good script out there. I said, what was it? He said, well, it's called Panic in Needle Park. I said, I think I just turned that down. He said, but, Al is interested, and that sort of changed the whole thing. I went back, reread it, went back to the producers, told them how foolish I was, and I think they agreed with me, but they were kind enough to give me another shot at it, and that's how it started with Al.
What did you see in him that you thought that he could bring to this character in Panic?
Well, it was just such power. First of all, when I read it the second time, he was the character. I mean, I didn't think that he had to even act. Of course, that's not true, but I just saw the character. He became the character for me, and not being a student of acting, I depended on things like that at the beginning.
Yeah. Was there a rehearsal process involved in this film?
Yeah. Well, actually, it was more than a rehearsal process, because this was Al's first major film. And he, Kitty, and we just hung out for about a month and a half together. We'd go to places where junkies were. We'd go to hospitals. We'd go to seminars. We just really hung out. We got to know each other. We got to know them. We saw awful things that we related to for our characters, but it's sort of something that doesn't really happen in most films, because economically it's not feasible for actors to give up a month and a half of their time to just hang out.
Yeah, it's a real luxury, I would think.
Yeah, it is.
And all that experience, it definitely made it onto the screen. All of that rehearsal time and all that experience you had pre-production.
Well, I'm pleased when Al always says he thinks it's his best role, and in some ways I understand what he's talking about, because he had the most freedom to express himself.
Yeah. Well, he was actually, he showed 8 minutes of Panic in Needle Park to the studio behind The Godfather. Is this true? And
actually, it was about 20 minutes, because he screen tested 4 times for Paramount. Francis Coppola had seen him on the stage the same way I had, and Francis wanted him. There was no question about it. But it's Paramount that didn't want him, and he screen tested 4 times. I had put together a 20-minute version of Panic so that we could take it around to distributors and such, and Al asked if I would send it to Francis, and I did, and obviously he showed it to Paramount, and they changed their mind.
I have to ask you about Scarecrow, because this is absolutely one of my favorite movies.
Oh, thank you.
And I know that it's a script that Pacino particularly loved and championed. At least that's what I heard. Is that true?
When we were shooting, or just after we were shooting Panic, he was telling me about Scarecrow. I was not involved in it, and I don't know, something happened. Something must have happened with the director that was involved with it, and both he and Hackman didn't want to do the film with that director, so I guess they had a conversation. My agent, who was also Al's agent, sent it to me, and I didn't quite know what for, and I called him, and he told me, read it and tell me if you like it. I did, and they said, and they told us the situation. After a while, both Al and I, we felt a little bit guilty about the situation, and we told our agent, we don't really like acing somebody out of a script like that. It just doesn't seem right. And he got furious and said to me, anyhow, do you like the script? I said, yes, I do. He says, well, just leave the rest to me. And they made some arrangement in which everything was very amicable.
Well, in the film, Gene Hackman, who incidentally, Gene Hackman has said that this is his personal favorite out of all of his own performances. I've read that many times. But Gene Hackman and Al Pacino, they essentially play two hobos that form a bond. Hackman is the kind of the tough and embittered half, and Pacino is the soft-hearted and vulnerable one. Right. Were their working styles very different?
Yes. I always said that, Gene would come in and he'd put on his costume and he became the character. Al sort of carried it with him most of the time. And I think in some ways, although I know Gene respected his acting, he was a little bit, maybe I wouldn't say nervous, but he understood that Al and I had worked together, so he was a little bit cautious about that. But Al always, just took more time, and Gene was always, Gene's the ultimate professional. He's always right there, always on time, and Al isn't. But every actor is different, and every actor needs different care. And it sort of, I think in some ways, affected their relationship. And I saw that at one point, Gene was trying to intimidate Al. And I thought it over, and I thought, well, that's really what's happening in the film.
Exactly, yeah.
So I'll just leave it happen for a while. But years later, I started to realize that was Gene preparing himself for that character. I don't think it was something personal. I think it was Gene just preparing himself for that character. Al was the other character. Because Al becomes the characters that he takes on. There's an actress in Scarecrow, Penny Allen.
Yes.
And she plays Al's wife. And from the first time she read for me till the time we performed it on film, she would be just as dynamic in that role. And I said to Al, tell me, what is it that allows her to be so right on every single time? And he said, if you tell her she's a chair, she's a chair. And I realized that's the way Al is. If you tell him he is something or you show him a character, he becomes that character.
Wow. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that scene specifically, because Penny Allen, as you say, that's the only scene she has in the film, correct?
Right.
And it is a high point of the film. It's a phone conversation between Pacino and Penny Allen.
Right.
And phone acting, how does that work? Do each of them have someone to play off of, or?
I believe she was on the other end of that phone.
Yeah.
And he was on the other end of that phone, because I usually try to make it as honest as possible.
Yeah.
And but as I say with her, I've seen her do that maybe 8, 9, 10 times, because every time she would do it, she'd be that powerful. And Al was the same way. And they were just into that scene.
It's very interesting, because these are among two of my favorite moments from Pacino's films. The phone conversation in Scarecrow and the phone conversation in Dog Day Afternoon. He just excels in both of those moments.
But to be a director with actors like that is something extraordinary. I would stand behind the camera sometime, and I know that we talk a lot about different aspects of the character, about different aspects of the film. But when you stand behind the camera and you see them do things that are just so amazing, you just say to yourself, how did they get to that? Because, we never got near that in our discussions, but that's their craft, that's their talent.
In terms of the rehearsal period for Scarecrow, I understand that they actually, Hackman and Pacino actually went hitching together for a period of time?
Yeah, they went up to San Francisco for a while, and they went around together, but I wasn't involved in that. I sanctioned it, and I just said I thought it was a great idea, and they did that. I think they're a great combination, and the first scene in the diner, which goes on for 8 minutes, I just barely put one cut in there because they were so fantastic going on.
That's right, yeah.
In a scene together, and they're just, I've seen great actors. I've seen Olivier do the telephone book, and he was great. That's the way these actors are.
You shot it in continuity as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
How important was that, given the nature of the relationship that they had to build in the film? What does that do for actors?
Well, I think it's important to the actors. It's important to the director because we can think, linearly. We can think what's happening next. If doing a film is like being in a time capsule because you go to the end, you stop at the end, you go back to the middle, you come back to the end, you're back to the beginning, and it's very difficult to keep your emotions, your moods, and but for an actor, and I think Gene has mentioned this a number of times, it was just such a pleasure for them. Well, for them, it's like doing a play.
Right.
I've always heard actors say that they get more out of doing theater because film sort of takes things out of you while theater puts things into you.
Yeah.
And I think it has a lot to do with the continuity of acting.
I couldn't let you go without asking about some of the other outstanding talents that you've worked with, just to get your impressions on them. I know you worked with Meryl Streep.
Yes.
What was your impression of her?
Well, see, I didn't know Meryl before she came in. She actually came in and read for me, which I feel now privileged. But she came in, and I just was astounded by her reading. Same thing happened with Morgan Freeman. He came in and he read for me, and because Morgan had been around for 30 years, but he didn't do any films. Meryl hadn't had any films out. Actually, while we were shooting, the television series came out, and she was an instant star. Before that, we'd go to dinner and everything. Nobody would even take notice, and as soon as the television series came out, that was before Deer Hunter.
Yes. She was in Holocaust.
Holocaust, yeah. Holocaust came out, and she was immediate success.
Mm.
And she's one of the nicest people in the world.
Yeah. Also Morgan Freeman, who just dynamic and street smart, just incredible performance. What was that experience like? What is Morgan?
Well, he came in. Well, the whole experience was great, but he came in and he was very cool. It was not in my mind to have somebody that old in the part, but he just sat down, talked for a little bit, reached in his bag, took out a banana, started eating it. There was just something, and a lot of my casting has to do with my conversations with them and my impressions. I went home that night and I said to my wife, I read an actor today that was just fantastic. I think I'm going to change the part so they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I spoke to him about it, I said, if you were CEO of General Motors, that's the way you would handle the street. And he went ahead. He just started building on that.